How did a single decision ignite one of the greatest wars in mythological history? The Trojan War is more than just a tale of battles. It's a story of love, betrayal, pride, and the clash of powerful gods and mortal heroes. Welcome to the full saga of the Trojan War, where legendary figures like Achilles, Hector, and Odysseus fought for glory, and where the walls of Troy fell to one of the most cunning deceptions in history. If you're captivated by epic tales, make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into the myths and legends that shaped our world. Every war has its origins, but few are sparked by something as seemingly trivial as a beauty contest. Our story begins not with a battle, but at a wedding, the marriage of Peleus and Thetis, the parents of Achilles. All the gods were invited to celebrate, except for one, Eris, the goddess of discord. Angry at her exclusion, she threw a golden apple into the crowd of gods, inscribed with the words, "To the fairest." Three goddesses, Hera, the queen of the gods, Athena, the goddess of wisdom and war, and Aphrodite, the goddess of love, each claimed the apple. But only one could be chosen, and they sought out a mortal man, Paris, the prince of Troy, to make the decision. Why Paris? Because he was known for his fairness and judgment, but this time he was caught between three divine powers. Each goddess offered Paris something in return for the golden apple. Hera promised him political power and dominion over all of Asia. Athena offered wisdom and unmatched skill in battle. But Aphrodite offered something that Paris could not resist: the love of the most beautiful woman in the world, Helen of Sparta. Blinded by desire, Paris awarded the apple to Aphrodite, setting in motion a chain of events that would lead to war. Helen, however, was already married to Menelaus, the king of Sparta. But under Aphrodite's influence, Paris sailed to Sparta, took Helen, and brought her back to Troy. This act of abduction, or seduction, depending on the version of the myth, was not just a personal offense to Menelaus, but an affront to all of Greece. An oath had been sworn by Helen's former suitors, including the greatest kings and warriors of Greece, to protect her marriage. Now Menelaus called on them to honor that oath, and war was inevitable. The call to arms echoed throughout Greece. Leading the charge was Agamemnon, the powerful king of Mycenae and brother of Menelaus. He would command the Greek forces in their mission to retrieve Helen and avenge the insult to his house. The greatest warriors from across the Greek world answered the call. Achilles, the greatest warrior of his time, a demigod and the son of Thetis, was brought out of hiding. His mother had tried to keep him away from the war, knowing the dangers, but destiny drew him in. Achilles would become both the Greeks' greatest asset and their greatest challenge. Then there was Odysseus, the cunning king of Ithaca, known for his sharp mind and ability to outwit even the gods. Though he initially tried to avoid the war by pretending to be mad, Odysseus couldn't escape his fate. Ajax the Great, towering above all others, was a warrior of immense strength and bravery. And then there was Nestor, the wise old king who, though no longer young, offered invaluable advice and strategy to the younger warriors. With ships built, armies assembled, and their resolve hardened, the Greeks set sail for Troy. But the gods had their own plans, and the journey to Troy was delayed by divine intervention. The winds refused to blow, and Agamemnon was forced to make a grim decision. To appease the goddess Artemis, who was angry at the Greeks, Agamemnon had to sacrifice his own daughter, Iphigenia. This act would haunt him for the rest of his life, casting a shadow over the Greek expedition before it even reached the shores of Troy. When the Greeks finally arrived at the shores of Troy, they found a city prepared for war. Troy was a powerful city-state, ruled by the aged King Priam and defended by his sons, including Hector, the Prince of Troy, and one of the greatest warriors of his age. Troy's walls, built by the gods, seemed impenetrable, and the war that was supposed to reclaim Helen stretched on for 10 long years. During those years, the Greeks and Trojans engaged in countless battles. Heroes on both sides clashed, while the gods themselves took an active role in the conflict. Hera and Athena, still angry at Paris's decision in favor of Aphrodite, supported the Greeks, while Aphrodite, along with Apollo and Ares, aided the Trojans. Achilles, the Greeks' strongest warrior, dominated the battlefield, his mere presence enough to send fear through the Trojan ranks. But Achilles was not without flaws. His pride and arrogance would soon lead to disaster. As the war dragged on, tensions rose between Achilles and Agamemnon. When Agamemnon seized Briseis, a woman Achilles had claimed as his prize of war, Achilles was enraged. Insulted, he withdrew from battle, refusing to fight for the Greeks. Without their greatest warrior, the tide turned against the Greeks. While Achilles sat in his tent, brooding over his pride, the Trojans, led by Hector, began to push the Greeks back to their ships. Hector, a prince of Troy and the embodiment of Trojan honor, fought not just for his city, but for his family, his wife Andromache, and their young son Astyanax. The Greeks needed a hero, and it was Patroclus, Achilles' closest friend, who stepped forward. Wearing Achilles' armor, Patroclus led the Greeks back into battle, hoping to inspire them and drive the Trojans away from the ships. But in the heat of battle, Patroclus encountered Hector. Believing he was facing Achilles, Hector struck Patroclus down, killing him. When news of Patroclus's death reached Achilles, his grief turned to fury. His rage was unmatched, and he swore to avenge his fallen friend. Donning new armor forged by Hephaestus, the god of blacksmiths, Achilles returned to the battlefield, a force of nature driven by vengeance. The duel between Achilles and Hector is one of the most famous moments in the war. The two champions met outside the walls of Troy, with the fate of the city hanging in the balance. Hector, knowing his death was near, faced Achilles with courage, but he was no match for the fury of the Greek hero. Achilles struck Hector down and, in his rage, desecrated Hector's body by dragging it behind his chariot around the walls of Troy. The gods, watching from Olympus, were deeply involved in the war. Hera and Athena sought to ensure the Greeks' victory, while Apollo and Aphrodite protected the Trojans. Even Zeus, the king of the gods, took a personal interest in the conflict, though he tried to remain neutral at times. After Achilles' brutal treatment of Hector's body, the gods intervened. King Priam, guided by Hermes, snuck into the Greek camp to beg Achilles for his son's body. In one of the most moving scenes of the war, Priam, the king of Troy, knelt before Achilles, pleading for the return of Hector's body so it could be given a proper burial. Touched by the old king's grief, Achilles relented, giving Hector's body back to his father. For a moment, there was peace between the two enemies. But the war was far from over. Though Hector had fallen, Troy's walls still stood, and the Greeks knew they could not breach them by force. It was Odysseus, the clever king of Ithaca, who devised a plan that would finally bring Troy to its knees. The Greeks constructed a massive wooden horse, hollowed out to hide a group of soldiers inside. Pretending to retreat, the Greeks left the horse outside the gates of Troy as an offering to the gods. Believing the war was over, the Trojans brought the horse into their city, unaware of the danger lurking inside. That night, as the Trojans celebrated their apparent victory, the Greek soldiers hidden inside the horse emerged and opened the city gates. The Greek army, which had been waiting nearby, stormed the city. Troy, the once great city, was taken by surprise and fell in a single night. Fires raged, and the streets ran red with blood. King Priam was killed in his own palace, and the surviving Trojans were either slaughtered or enslaved. Helen, whose beauty had sparked the war, was returned to Menelaus. The war was over, and Troy was no more. Though the Greeks had won the war, their victory came at a great cost. Achilles, the greatest warrior of the Greeks did not live to see Troy fall. He was struck down by an arrow, guided by Apollo and shot by Paris, which pierced his heel, the only vulnerable part of his body. For the surviving Greek heroes, the journey home was fraught with danger. Agamemnon returned home to a tragic fate, murdered by his wife Clytemnestra. Ajax, another great warrior, took his own life in shame after losing a dispute over Achilles' armor. But perhaps the most famous journey home was that of Odysseus, whose long and perilous voyage would become the subject of Homer's next great epic, the Odyssey. The Trojan War wasn't just a battle over a stolen queen. It was a story of pride, honor, love, and the devastating consequences of human ambition. The war itself may have ended, but its legacy lived on, inspiring poets, playwrights, and artists for centuries to come. The heroes of Troy became legends, their deeds immortalized in the annals of history. And so, the question remains, was it worth it? Did the glory of battle outweigh the tragedy of loss? Let us know in the comments what you think the most significant part of the Trojan War was. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into one of mythology's greatest stories, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us for more explorations into the epic tales that shaped the ancient world. Until next time, remember, every great war has its heroes, but not every hero returns home.